I'm Hironosi Kato from the University of Tokyo, Department of Civil Engineering. And I will talk about recent issues of urban rail development in Tokyo and the current discussions about the future railway developments in the Tokyo metropolitan area. I hope you know something about Tokyo already. Tokyo is the capital city of Japan with over 35 million people populations. According to the United Nations, this metropolitan area is one of the largest populated area in the world. Tokyo is located at the center of this white area. White area is a plain area made by the big river running to the bays. Tokyo has an advantage to have a very good bay connected to Pacific Oceans, and we are very good locations next to Pacific Ocean for particularly exporting, importing with other countries. And because of these big plain areas, roughly 50 kilometers radius circle area can contain the very big populations. But to deal with a very big demand caused by 35 million people, we should develop a very sophisticated railway network, particularly for commuting from suburban area to the center of Tokyo. Before starting with more details about Tokyo's issues, I'd like to illustrate the definitions of areas in Tokyo. Blue bigger area is typically defined as the Tokyo metropolitan area, covering the Tokyo metropolitan governments, Chiba, Saitama, or several prefecture areas. And yellow and pink area is the Tokyo metropolitan government area, and particularly this pink area is the central business district or the ward area. Very rough statistics about these areas. As I told you, Tokyo metropolitan area has over 13 million people in 6,000 square kilometers. But if we look at only the pink area, Tokyo ward areas, center of Tokyo, we have 600 square kilometers, but the population is 9.1 million. So quite a high population density area we have in the center of Tokyo. Okay, then let me move to the urban rail development issues in Tokyo. We have a quite long history of developing urban railway in Tokyo, over 100 years. And one of the characteristics of developing railway network in Tokyo is a government-led or the master plan-led system. So the central governments made master plans for developing railway network in Tokyo many times in the past. And on the basis of such railway development master plans, private operators or the public operators made investments for railway network. This slide shows the past master plans. They are not all actually. And the history is divided into 4 stages before the World War to the latest master plans. Because the time is quite limited, I cannot talk the history, but the latest one was made in the year 2000. And our master plans covers usually 15 years or 20 years over urban railway developments. Actually, the latest one was made after 15 years later over second latest master plans in 1985. That means the next railway master plan will be expected to complete by 2015. And actually, I will talk a little bit later about the recent discussions about the master plan makings in Tokyo. Today, I would like to make a simple review about the latest railway master plan in Tokyo. But before that, I will quickly show the contents of the latest urban railway master plan made in the year of 2000. At that time, we have already had several problems in rapid aging in population. I will talk a little bit later more. And also, we should handle the market demands under the globalization. And additionally, many railway operators suffered the decline of urban rail demand. One of the reasons is, of course, rapid aging and low birth rate. Both of them cause less working populations. That means lead to the less commuter demand. The other reason is a change in land use pattern in the Tokyo metropolitan areas. Up to 1990s, maybe 1980s, most of the peoples who want to have houses, they found a place quite far from the city center, suburban area, and they bought the detached house with some small park, and that used to be a dream for middle-aged peoples. However, recently, younger generations changed their ideas, and they started to live more in the center of Tokyo and in the apartment house, very high-story apartment. Then, of course, commuter from the suburban to the center will decrease, and people living in the center don't need to use maybe rail, just to walk, or just to use a bicycle, even though they use rail just a short distance. That results in a decline of urban rail demand. But anyway, under those backgrounds, the government sets 5 targets regarding the urban rail development. First, reduction of in-vehicle congestion. Second, speed up rail service. Third, contribution to urban development, particularly in the center of Tokyo, more and more high-rise buildings, how to deal with the increase of rail demand generation. Fourth, improvements of accessibility to airports or the high-speed rail. And finally, development of the seamless, so-called seamless rail network, particularly for handicapped, aged, senior, disabled peoples. The map in the right hand of this slide shows the future network expected in year of 2015. And developments proposed by the governments are categorized into 3 types. Again, I don't have so much time this time, so I cannot talk the details about the categorizations. But anyways, governments proposed the different priorities of railway developments as of 2000 years. Then let me review the recent rail developments on the basis of the latest master plans. How could we reach the target set by the governments? But before that, up to 2010, or just recently, in the past 10 years, roughly 80% of our highest priority proposed railway network has been completed, including the network railway lines connecting the central business district to the suburban academic research parks railway network, or some new railway connecting the CBD with the international airport, Narita, or the other urban rail network has been developed in the past 10 years. Some of the rail lines, although they were proposed to be completed by 2015, they are a little bit delayed from the plans. But in coming 5 or 10 years, other railway network proposed in the highest priority will be expected to be completed. Yes, this graph shows the length of development rail network in the Tokyo metropolitan area from 2000 to 2011. in the past, roughly 200-kilometer new railway network has been newly introduced in the past on the basis of a master plan. Okay, then let me talk a little bit about performance in terms of 5 targets set in the latest master plan. First, in-vehicle crowding. The diagram shows the timeline of in-vehicle rail congestions in Tokyo. Maybe you know, maybe in the TV program or something, our city is kind of infamous for very heavy in-vehicle congestion, particularly morning peak hour in the rail service. In 1975, according to the data of the government, average in-vehicle congestion rate, this is defined as traffic flow divided by capacity, used to be over 200%. Wow. And the Japanese government showed some illustrations for imaging the congested situations. Over 200% means really packed and cannot move inside the vehicle car. But from 1975 to 2000, these red lines kept declining. That means traffic congestions, in-vehicle congestions, declines up to roughly 2000. This is 2003. But you see, after 2003, this red line is almost stable. That means in the past roughly 10 years, our in-vehicle congestions have not been improved so much. Why? Before the year 2000, blue line shows the traffic capacity and the green line shows the traffic volume, demand. Up to 1993, green line had increased. That means our traffic demand increased up to 1993. But after that, started to decrease. As I told you, there are several reasons. One of the reasons for the recent stable congestion rate is a decrease in traffic demand. But I'd like to highlight the supply side. Blue line capacities had increased up to 2003, probably because of the effort taken by transportation or railway companies to make more investments, increasing the capacity. Maybe the additional lines or quadruple tracks, etc. But after that, they completely stopped new investments, probably because of economic recessions and also the expectations of a future decrease of demand. Because of these two reasons, recently our congestion rate is not so much decreasing. Unfortunately, government's target is 150% in average in 31 major sections, but the government target has not been achieved yet. So, yeah, I forgot one thing to say. Most of the railway companies in Japan is private. That is quite unique characteristics in Tokyo. Roughly 23 or 4 private rail operators compete each other. So once they find out profitability is poor, then they stop easily. They stop investments. So although governments have a very high target, a lower congestion rate, but how the private company can be motivated to make further investments. That is current issues. Second issues, speed up of rail service. Due to the investment of rail network, accessibility to the central business district in Tokyo has been significantly improved. Right top graph shows coverage areas within 19 minutes from each area zone to the center of Tokyo. You see, these red colors distributed like fingers. That means rail users typically live along the rail lines. It's a kind of a TOD. So most of the residential areas is located along the rail lines, and they commute to the CBDs using railways. So in that sense, our city is successful in terms of TODs. The change in travel time to CBD from each regions from 2000 to 2010s are illustrated in the right bottom map. You see, this northeast area or the eastern area has been significantly improved in terms of accessibility to the center of Tokyo because of newly introduced railway lines. This one is, as I told you, academic research park, and because of introduction of new lines, accessibility has been improved, and also the accessibility from the airport to the CBD also has been improved. The third, contribution to urban development. Please look at the right-hand graph. This shows the timeline of floors of super high-rise buildings. The definition of super high-story buildings is buildings with over 60-meter height, so very tall buildings. You see, the floors of such a super high-story buildings increased gradually from roughly 2000 to 2008. And this situation is still continuing, almost doubled. That means more and more super high-rise buildings have emerged in the past 10 years. And this, of course, generates a big traffic demand, particularly in the center of Tokyo. And many stations where the urban redevelopment was implemented experiences very big jump of traffic demand. For example, Roppongi, many high-story buildings have been introduced by redeveloping the existing urban area. Traffic demand increased almost triple. Osaki or the Tennozu, several areas experienced a very big increase of demand. However, latest master plans propose the introduction of a new rail line connecting those areas. Therefore, at least so far, we have not yet experienced so critical situations caused by the increase of traffic demand. Fourth, improvement of accessibility to international airport. This is international comparison among the major cities about the accessibility from the airport to the CBD. Blue bar shows the minimum access travel time from the airport, nearest international airport to the CBD. Red bar shows the distance between them. The left bar shows Tokyo. Narita Airport is located quite far, over 60 kilometers far from the center of Tokyo. And because of that, we used to suffer long travel time. However, by the introductions of Narita Sky Access in 2010, this time is significantly reduced into the almost same level of Chicago, a little bit longer than London or Paris. But still, we are discussing about the further investments for improving the accessibility to the international airports, because we will have, the Summer Olympic Game in 2020, and many more visitors from all over the world expected to come to Tokyo. We may have more businesses internationally. We should improve. Furthermore, finally, development of seamless rail network. Yes, as I told you, more and more senior people may travel in Tokyo's railway network. So we should invest furthermore the facilities supporting such handicapped peoples. And many stations have already many facilities supporting the wheelchair users, or the low floor vehicles have been introduced. And many stations have already introduced a non-step route in Tokyo. This means from the entrance to the platform, at least one route which enables the peoples can access to the platform without steps. Now is roughly 80% of the stations in the major stations in Tokyo have reached this goal. Okay, they are the reviews of the past 10 years rail development in the Tokyo. Then what should we do furthermore in the next 15 years? Recently, that means academic researchers are invited to discuss about the future issues in railway network, urban railway issues in Tokyo. And according to the governments, they set up formally the committees for making next master plans from next April. And so far, academic researchers and planners or the practical peoples have raised many important issues which should be discussed in the next master plan. I pick up some issues because of a time limitation. First is delay of service issues. As I showed you, in the center of Tokyo, more and more super high-story buildings have been built, but still it's continuing. Maybe Olympic game or the government policies support the more developments over such high-story buildings. Please note, the government policies regarding the deregulations over building volume, height, FARs have boosted, particularly since 2002, for the high-story buildings development in the center of Tokyo. That policy was aimed to boost the economy because our government, our society has experienced long economic recessions. So one of the approaches to recover our economy is expected to be in these policies. Anyways, further development of a high-story building expected. That have already caused serious service delays at the central area stations because the capacity is not sufficient compared with the demand. Additionally, our Tokyo's rail network has an interesting characteristic in which suburban rail network are directly, physically connected to the metro system. It's like LAL in Paris. Yes, so the railway can directly through into the metro and maybe again go to the suburban areas. Of course, this enables passengers to travel more easily, conveniently, without any transfer at the terminal stations. So for the handicapped people, maybe this is a very good railway network. However, once traffic delay, service delay occurs at the center of Tokyo, that affects all over the railway network in the Tokyo because the service is physically connected. Once delay starts, then even a very far place from the center have also the similar delay problems. Therefore, we are afraid the problem starting from the city center of Tokyo covers all over the Tokyo, and that's loses a lot of economics opportunities for peoples. And according to the survey done by the governments, direct through operated lines have more seriously delayed and also the longer delayed than independent railway network. So therefore, how can we deal with the delay caused in the center of Tokyo, mainly caused by the very big, gigantic developments in the center? It's big issues. That is the one thing. Second issue is the rapid aging. These maps shows the future projections over rapid aging in Tokyo. Thicker color means higher percentage of senior generations in each zones. Thickest one shows percentage of senior population over 65 years old is over 45%. Almost half of that zone's populations is over 65 years old. You see, up to 2015, not so much serious, but 20 years later, many areas are thick colored. That means Tokyo metropolitan area have more senior peoples, and we expect senior people's travels, or we are afraid of poor mobilities for peoples with handicapped. I show one interesting data about mobility, so trip patterns by different age subgroups. This graph shows horizontal axis is age group from 5 to 9 to 85 years old, and vertical axis is number of trips according to the surveys. And the different colors lines means different years surveys. Every 10 years, Tokyo has big travel surveys. And light blue color is 1978. Red color is 2008. You see, senior people or the middle-aged people over 45 years old have more trips, gradually increasing. Senior, even those they're over 65 years old, they make more trips than before. That means more senior active. And but on the other hand, interestingly, 15 years old to 35 years old, middle age or the younger age people make less trips. Why? Yes, we are discussing a lot the reason why. Maybe presented in earlier sessions. It could be because of ICT or the smartphones or Facebooks. I'm not sure. But anyway, in this presentation, I'd like to highlight the future expected increase of travels made by senior peoples, maybe active senior. But to what extent, to what extent they will make trips? Increase further more and more? We are not sure. So we are now making the several surveys about their future trips, but still it is uncertain. Improvement of accessibility to airport. We have two major airports in Tokyo. One is Narita Airport. I showed you in the international comparisons among different cities. That is a major international airport so far. We have another airport, Haneda Airport, that has been used mainly for domestic air services. However, more business people make strong pressures on the societies to use the two airports for international air services recently. And recently, more slots in the runways are allocated over international services to Haneda Airport. But at this moment, the time slot given to Haneda Airport for international services are quite limited because of the maybe demarcations policies by the government, or some noise issues, or the more capacity, lack of capacity, etc. It's quite difficult to say. But anyway, at this moment, the Haneda is not so much internationalized, but from today, or I forgot exactly, from anyways, next April, more capacity is given to international services, even in Haneda Airport, and also further internationalizations is expected in Haneda Airport. And Haneda Airport is much closer to Narita Airport. And Haneda is also operated for 24 hours. Yes, so why shouldn't we use the Haneda Airport more? One of the issues we are discussing is accessibility to Haneda Airport. We have already 2 railway access services to Haneda Airport, but more demand may require further investments of access rail. And the governments or the private operators have proposed several ideas of investment of additional access railway network to Haneda airports. But at this moment, railway service is only on the daytime, but many slots for the international services are located only very early in the morning or late in the evenings. Railway service cannot cover such a kind of a demand. Therefore, direct shuttle bus or the direct bus connecting the airport to each regions have been introduced. But how railway should do? We should 24-hour operation? Yes, many discussions have been done. 2 more slides. Improvement of accessibility at CBD is another issue. Usually, accessibility has been discussed in the suburban area in the past. However, as I told you, more and more people started to live in the center of Tokyo. But already network has been built, particularly underground. Difficult to make additional investments in the center of Tokyo, particularly urbanized area. When we look at the center of Tokyo, there are several areas who has a poor accessibility to metro. And those areas are targeted by the developers for building high-story buildings. So how can we manage the access for the newcomers in the new high-story buildings, which is located in the poor accessibility area? That is another issue. Maybe not the rail, maybe BRT, LRT, another new transportation mode. We are discussing possibilities. This is final. As you know, in 2011, we experienced a very big earthquake in Tohoku regions. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm not sure. But anyway, fortunately, Tokyo's railway network was not physically damaged. However, to check the damage, railway service completely stopped for at least 1 day, maybe multiple days. And the earthquake occurs roughly 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something. So many people work at the workplaces, but the railway service stopped for overnight. How should they do? They wanted to return home, but many people live the very suburban area. They were forced to work overnight. And although many people try to use cars, but as photos shows, completely stuck. And the bus services also stuck. this is very tough situation, particularly for handicapped people or the senior people probably. How can we handle under emergency? That is another issue. Railways, yes, our society, Tokyo, rely on railway network very deeply. But once something happens, our society's activities could stop easily. So how can we deal with, overcome the vulnerabilities of these railway-oriented cities is another new issue. Okay, sorry, I used up my time. I couldn't talk everything, but I roughly talked the major issues which could be discussed in the next master plans. Formally, discussion will start next fiscal years, so from next April. I'm also a member of this committee, so I may make a maybe report in the next opportunities about the progress of our discussions. Thank you very much for your attention.